happens to be at HEB right now. And about a week or so ago, he called me and said, "Would you like to teach?" I'm going to tell you, teaching Revelation has never been on my bucket list. But I have learned some things in the process, and I hope that together we can have some benefit on what I've learned and want to share with you. If you want to be turning, and I'm going to be reading the first 6 verses of chapter 12. John said, "And a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads 7 diadems. His tail swept down a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, he might devour it. She gave birth to a male child, one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was caught up to God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days. So the first thing we notice about this particular part, it's a battle. And this battle pictures the birth and glory of Christ. Was Jesus' birth an easy event for his parents, for the children around him? If you can recall, when the wise man appeared and they were looking for Jesus, and they had talked to Herod, Herod said, "Let me know where you find this, because I want to go worship him too." Was that Herod's purpose? No. Herod wanted to eliminate this child. And when the wise men didn't return, Herod tried to get him another way by having all the male children killed who were 2 years and younger. This is a picture of the battle that was going on. Satan trying to eliminate Jesus. But that battle, it's not just about the birth. Even though we see that the picture of the woman giving birth, according to what I read, it's not just about the birth. It's about Jesus' whole life. And if you think about it, there were many times when people were trying to kill Jesus. The Jews were trying to kill him over and over and over again. Which, if they had been successful, which they weren't, every time they would try to trap him, he'd just scoot out, vanish, whatever he needed to do, until it was time for him to die. If they had been successful in killing him before that time, then Satan would have won. Because everything had to be according to the prophecy, everything had to be according to justice God has set it about. We'll see a little bit later that this is also pictures the eternal struggle, which even continues today with the people of God. There are four main characters. The woman symbolizes the people of God under both covenants. The dragon symbolizes Satan. The male child represents Christ. And the rest of her children, who are the children of God on earth. So a little bit more. The woman appears and she is pregnant and crying out in pain. She's ready to give birth. But notice the description. Being clothed with the sun shows her brightness and glory. She has a crown with 12 stars, which is a victor's crown. At the first of the story, the woman represents the faithful of Israel in the Old Testament. The spiritual remnant of God's people who kept his covenant. Micah actually wrote about this in Micah chapter 4. He says, "Writhe and groan, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in labor. For now you shall go out from the city and dwell in the open country. You shall go to Babylon. There you shall be rescued. There the Lord will redeem you from the hand of your enemies." Then Micah 5:2. "But you, O Bethlehem Ephrathah, you are too little to be among the clans of Judah. From you shall come forth for me one who is to be the ruler in Israel, whose coming forth is from of old, from ancient days." So we see from that prophecy that it was supposed to be from the remnant that was left. As I said, later on, the woman's role changes to represent all of God's people. We'll see that. The next character we see is the red dragon. I looked for a picture that I might put on the screen, but couldn't find one that I thought represented what we needed to see. But this dragon had 7 heads and 7 horns. And in verse 9, it's identified as Satan. The 7 heads, according to what I've looked at, refer to either his intelligence or authority in the realm of the world. The crowns show his complete authority. After all, he is the prince of devils. Notice how big he is. The dragon is so huge, especially his tail, that with one swoop, he knocks out 1/3 of the stars of the sky. This is similar to the first 4 trumpets, where it says 1/3 of the stars of heaven are cast out of the sky and hurled to the earth. What John is trying to tell us here, is Satan weak? Or is he pretty strong? And create all kinds of problems for us. According to this, he's strong. At first, the dragon's not really concerned about the woman herself. It's the child she's carrying. But later on, we'll see that changes. Okay, we'll move on through the verses a little bit more. We'll look at Revelation 12, 7 through 9, if you want to follow along. Now war arose in heaven. Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated. And there was no longer place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, the ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. This is something else I learned during this process of studying this. I've been one who has kind of cookie-cutted Revelation and was trying to make application of literal. And so I was thinking, okay, this verse was talking about Satan being cast down literally, and his, his being that's where he got started. Him and his angels. But if you keep in mind the logic of study, you can't change in the mid of your study, changing from literal to symbolic to literal to symbolic. It doesn't work. So the one that I was looking at says this is actually this battle scene is not something that just began, because it represents a long and continuous battle between good and evil. The casting down of the dragon, he says, does not mean that there had been no evil influence on the earth prior to that time. Because we know that evil influence began in the Garden of Eden and can be traced throughout history. What is the climatic moment? What causes him to be cast down? It's one major event. The death on the cross. Because of that death, because of Jesus dying for sins, Satan and his followers have been given a very severe setback. That's what he was trying to avoid all this time. So his expulsion from heaven is directly associated with and follows after the completion of the mission of the redemption of the male child. His goal was to come and die and to be resurrected. By doing so, he would be attacking Satan's kingdom. And we can see this kind of language because even when Christ spoke about casting out demons by himself or his disciples, he spoke of it as Satan falling from heaven. Christ's main mission? To destroy the one who had the power of death, and to deliver those who are under the bondage from that fear of death. In those verses, we see a battle announced. We see the end of the battle, but we really don't see the battle itself, do we? just it being announced. Revelation chapter 12, verses 10 through 12. We'll move through there. John says, "And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, Now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accusers of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they love not the lives even to death. Rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short." So a loud voice. You get the feeling there's excitement in heaven? A loud voice. A proclamation of victory. The conquering has been done by the blood of the Lamb. It was a victory that could only be accomplished by the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. But do you notice there in the celebration of the victory, there's also a warning. Basically, he's saying, Satan's been defeated, but look out, earth, because here he comes. Which brings us to verses 13 through 17. When the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given 2 wings of the great eagle so that she might fly from the serpent into the wilderness, to the place where she is nourished for time and times and a half a time. The serpent poured water like a river out of his mouth after the woman to sweep her away with the flood. But the earth came to the help of the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon had poured from his mouth. Then the dragon became furious with the woman, and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandment of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. And he stood on the sand of the sea. Satan goes after the woman now. He's failed to destroy the child. So now he's going after her. Did God allow that to happen? Did God allow him to be victorious for the woman? No. He even gave her wings to escape. The author indicates that the woman now takes the identity of the church, and that her offspring are all the Christians. He mentions that the power of the gospel is continuing to spread from Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. And as it does, the hostility between it, Satan, and his followers increase. Hadn't slowed down even today, has it? The church is still under attack. The two main figures in this demonstrate to us the deep inner struggle against good and evil, against the Lord and Satan. The battle is mentioned and the victor is announced as Christ and his followers. Christians, comfort. We win. Christ is the winner. And it should do the same for us. But even though defeated, Satan does not give up. Ever know people like that? They keep fighting and fighting and fighting, even though they know they've been defeated. So now the scene changes and Satan can't get the woman. So what does he do? He goes, out gets some allies. Which is what happens in Revelation 13. In verses 1 and 2. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 diadems on its horns and blasphemous names on its head. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority. Some of this I'm about to share is kind of interesting. The first thing that is noticed is this beast is coming out of the sea. And the author says that's significant because the Hebrew people weren't sea people. They actually viewed the sea as an awesome and fearful part of creation. Where storms and destructive forces come from. An idea of that is found in Daniel 7. In it, Daniel sees 4 winds of heaven stirring up a great sea. From out of the sea arises 4 beasts different from one another. These 4 beasts represent kings or kingdoms. This would suggest that the sea represents human societies or nations from which the kingdoms come. So John is talking about kingdoms here. If you're an early Christian, there in reading this, what kingdom would come to mind? What is the ruling kingdom at the time? Anyone? Terry? Rome. Rome is it. Of the Roman emperors, who was the first one to start really persecuting Christians? There's a legend, but they say it's not true, but there's a legend of him fiddling. Nero. So here's the vision that John's giving. The kingdom or this beast coming out of the sea is trouble. And the author believes that they understood it to be Rome and Nero. According to what where did its power come from? It's the dragon, right? Dragon, Satan. Satan is the one. Because what was the goal? If I can kill enough Christians to discourage them, then I'll win. Didn't quite work that way, did it? So this beast has authority and all kinds of power. And the Roman Empire had more power, authority, than anything I could ever think of. It was huge. Then an interesting point comes in verse 3. It says, one of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed. And the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. Now, if you follow along with the idea that this beast is Nero, it said that it had a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed. Nero, the emperor who was punishing the Christians, dies. Was that the end of the persecution for Christians? No. There's another emperor named Domitian who picked it up. So John's saying, okay, Nero, basically persecutor of Christian ruler, beast, was there. He died. And then the whole principle of persecuting Christians was revived, was healed. And that was Domitian. So that's what they think this referred to. Were the Roman Empire, the Roman emperors, were they liked? Did everyone go, ah? Were some of them so full of themselves that they declared themselves as gods? Did the people, some of them, bow down to those gods? Verse 4. And they worshipped the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like the beast? And who can fight against it? The people are going, hey, this thing's so powerful. We have seen them destroy other countries and just take them over. So they're just thinking it's awesome, it's invincible. But again, who gave the beast its power? It was the dragon. It was Satan. So wouldn't that mean that if you were worshiping this beast, you were in fact worshiping the dragon? Are they connected? It says, since the beast represented the Roman Empire, the worship paid to him is directed to the empire's great strength in rendering homage to the Roman emperor. The world was worshiping Satan. And this worship is a counterpart to the worship of the one true and living God. Rome was now displaying unbelievable power and was giving to their people what the gods had failed to give. The stone gods, all this time, people wanted power, people wanted this, and they would pray to these stone gods, the idols. Wouldn't happen. But these Roman gods were giving them worldly wealth, glory, and influence. All those things really turn on our human brains, don't they? Really get to the things that we desire. Notice verse 5. And the beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words. It was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. No one really likes to be talked bad about, right? But this beast was basically uttering all kinds of blasphemies, slandering the name of God and those who live in heaven. Who are those people? Who are, we know who God is. Who is the ones that live in heaven? It's the church, right? Not literally live in heaven, but basically our whole kingdom is a spiritual kingdom. And eventually we'll get to heaven. Domitian was known for his arrogance and definitely claimed to be deity. Now, the author also says that 42 months was not an actual time frame, but basically a state of affairs where the saints are persecuted, but they were also protected. They were subject to suffering, but sustained. It was definitely a trial for Christians. I wouldn't want to have been there, because it was really a test of our faith. The goal was to wipe out the church. God didn't let that happen, did he? Jesus said, I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Gates of hell, at this point in time, was the Roman Empire, wasn't it? It did not succeed, even though it tried. All right. Verse 7 through 10. Also, it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. And authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation. And all who dwell on earth will worship it. everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb was slain. Of the Lamb who was slain. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is to be taken captive, to captivity he goes. If anyone is to be slain with a sword must he be slain. Here is the faith of the saints. So basically there's a contrast. We have a lot of people, worldly people, who are worshiping the Roman Empire and its emperors. And they were having a good time, weren't they? But those who had their name written in the book of life, what was happening to them? They were being taken captive. Why would he say, if anyone to be taken captive, to captivity goes? The temptation would be, if I'm going to be taken captive, to renounce Christ, right? If I think I'm going to lose my life, wouldn't the temptation be to renounce Christ? So John's saying, if it's going to happen to you, let it happen. Continue to follow Christ. It's meant to be. And the final thing is endurance. Is the Christian life a short race? A sprint? No. It's a race. It's a walk, you might say, of endurance. Hills, rocky roads, holes in the roads, detours, you name it, we face it. And today, there's still some people who face death for being a Christian. I'm thankful we don't. But there are those who do, even today. All right, verses 11 through 18. Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. It exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence. It makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. It performs great signs, even making fire come down from heaven to earth in front of people. And by the signs that it is allowed to work in the presence of the beast, it deceives those who dwell on earth, telling them to make an image for the beast that was wounded for the sword and yet lived. I believe it was Peter who said that there would be signs. People would do signs that would mislead Christians to believe in a false teaching. Continuing on. And it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. Also, it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark. That is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. That basically ends chapter 13. But again, John is giving the early Christians some hope, some encouragement. But he's also letting them know that what they're seeing is Satan basically manipulating the world. And that Rome, with its power, also connected, using the spiritualness of it and basically creating a god for them to serve. It's a double-handed. It's the power, it's the military might of Rome, and it's God worship. What happens when people blindly worship something? They will give their lives, won't they? I'm reminded of World War II, the kamikaze pilots. They were dedicated to the emperor. Rome had soldiers who were dedicated to the emperor. Had citizens who were dedicated to the emperor. And Christians were faced with bowing down to this emperor, just like Daniel was faced with. Or standing up and saying, I bow down to no one else but God. I've thought about this last part, and the author, really, the 666 part. When the Roman Empire was at its height, you pretty much needed to be a Roman citizen to accomplish much, right? To trade, to buy things, to own property, even. So perhaps that's what John was referring to, if all this is about the Roman Empire. As far as who the man is, that's speculation. Some people have tried to tie it to Nero. Particular author could not have any proof on that. Well, we got through it. That's the end of the chapter, and it's just about time to dismiss. Let's go to our Heavenly Father in prayer. Father in heaven, we thank you so much for our chance to come and study and learn. And Father, help us to get the best insight from what we've looked at tonight. Help us to encourage ourselves to know the battle's won. And that our task is to stand firm for you. Thank you for giving us your grace, your mercy, your love, all through your Son, Jesus Christ. It's in his name that we pray. Amen.